What would you do if an angel fell into your backyard? No, not me, that angel. Midwest Angelica is about just that, the arrival of a fallen angel, whose fall brings a slew of terrible things to humanity. But it's certainly not an angel as you'd think of one. Today on the Panopticon Theatre, we'll be exploring the first act of Midwest Angelica, trying to figure out what this quote-unquote angel is and what it's doing to Earth. Let's watch through each episode one by one and examine them. As always, I do highly recommend watching the series yourself first, especially as this one has pretty low views for its style. In the first video, Call Now, we see what appears to be an ad for Midwest Angelica, a sci-fi film set in 1999 about a corpse dropping from the sky into a backyard, described as an alien thriller. It's all very 80s. We see this slightly creepy visual, then we're given the inset with a number to call to get the film and the price. The description says this: the tape was discovered at the Oklahoma Cherokee site. It's believed that the footage, which depicts an advertisement on KMTV Channel 3, was recorded sometime between October 31st of 1991 and January 1st of 1992. The product depicted in the advertisement, a film titled Midwest Angelica, has yet to be recovered. If we slow down the glitch at the end, we see what appears to be some sort of star or fireball, and this message that appears to be a tornado warning for Douglas and Washington County up until 11 PM. This also seems to have been displayed on KMTV Channel 3. Video 2, Home, opens with a warning that this is an FBI protected video. This little bit at the bottom tells us that HOME, as an acronym, stands for Heavenly Operation and Material Examination. We then see the logo of HOME, who seem to be affiliated with NASA. June 1985. We hear from a Dr. Lucas Michaels at the Glenn Research Center, whose team encountered a strange biosignature around the orbit of Jupiter. They examined it and named it AZ001. It's 63.3 kilometers in diameter, which is about 41 miles. They're not yet sure if AZ001 is harboring life. By November, further scanning has revealed that AZ001 is in fact not harboring life, but instead that it itself is biological. They suspect it may be a corpse. We then jump to March 1987. They've calculated that AZ should reach Earth's orbit in 1999. NASA at this point decides to form HOME to keep an eye on AZ and to keep it hidden from the public. We then find out that Dr. Michaels went missing in 1989. We jump to 1995, and a Dr. Ray O'Connor from the Psychological Contamination Lab takes over the narration. They've been continuing to track AZ, and they've been picking up huge delta waves, brainwaves, the same as humans emit during deep sleep, from the object, even from such great distance. Then, we reach January 1st, 1999. AZ001 has reached HEO, or High Earth Orbit. We finally get some sort of visual on it as it passes in front of the moon, and it's disturbing. January 13th, and it's now in Low Earth Orbit, much closer. We get these close-up photos. On the 16th, it seems something is detached from the main body of the object. This chunk is labeled as AZ001 Alpha. We see a graph of atmospheric radio propagations, which shows a large burst around the time of the detachment. It is described as unlikely to be caused by sporadic E, which very basically is an occasional cloud of ionization that can affect radio frequencies. This means the spike here is likely something caused by or within AZ itself. Then, Alpha enters the atmosphere. It touches down at nearly 4 AM in Nebraska. The coordinates given are actually accurate to where it's indicated. Then, some classified footage, in a sort of found footage format, at 5:25 AM. The footage is difficult to make out, but it seems to be some sort of recovery team in hazmat gear. They comment on how large the object is, and one suggests they think it might be alive. A camera operator touches it, then it seems they decide to burn it, with a hazmat-suited person lighting it with a flamethrower. This seems to cause it to anger, and one of the hazmat people was killed in some sort of way. It almost looks like they were liquefied inside their suit. Then a little creature comes out of their discarded helmet. The description notes that the tape was discovered within the Grand Forks Technical College rubble. This is interesting. This college is quite far from where AZ dropped, up in North Dakota. And why is it left in rubble? Let's keep going. The next video, attention, first shows us a quick ad for Papa Rico's Pizza, then an announcement about pesticide tests that may have affected people in several counties. The symptoms described are insomnia, somnambulism, which is sleepwalking, strange or uncomfortable dreams, and general sleep problems. It's pretty obvious these aren't exactly normal issues a pesticide might cause in people. People from these counties are advised to call the number if they have any of the issues described. The phone number given is not actually connected to the series, by the way, it's a random number, please don't call it. However, the number does connect it to home. The description confirms that it probably has very little to do with pesticides. Apparently, it was also probably recorded sometime in 1995, so prior to the AZ Alpha arrival. Specifically, it's also the year we hear from Dr. O'Connor regarding AZ's brainwaves. It's clear then that somehow AZ is affecting people's sleep at the very least, and likely also somehow psychologically affecting people in other ways in a reasonably large area. Starfield Ranch, 16th of January 1999. These coordinates are just under 3 miles from the AZ Alpha landing site. Rancher Avery Jones is awoken to the sound of his dogs barking at approximately 4:31 AM. This is just under an hour before the footage we see at home. Avery's son Colin begins recording. He speaks briefly with his father, who says he's going to get a rifle. Left alone in the dark, suddenly something appears in Colin's view. We only get a very brief glimpse before the footage cuts out and is apparently too degraded to view. We do, however, get a few still frames over the course of a few minutes. Around 5 AM, we start hearing gunshots on the recording, likely from Avery's rifle. Then this. The horrifying text accompanying it reads, "Avery Jones is assimilated." Colin makes a run for his home, calling out for his mother. However, infection. At around 5:30, we rejoin Colin, who's clearly been running. Around 5:30, he collapses and starts gagging. We then see this. Family. We then jump to the 2nd of February, a whole month later. The camera seems to be discarded on the ground. Everything is blood red, and there appears to be some sort of large fungus growing within the view, around what looks like a house. Particles or spores can be seen floating around in the air. The battery level appears to be glitching. The description of the video adds a little information. Little is known about Starfield Ranch other than what's shown in the footage. Files containing information about the Jones family were recovered from Home HQ alongside the tape itself, which seems to have been annotated by Home. The files also state that it's unknown how the camera continued operation long after its battery should have been depleted. The way this is worded is interesting. It sounds like Home got hold of this tape somehow and were researching this family after the events shown here. However, it also sounds like someone or some unit is collecting this information from Home. The use of the word recovered suggests something has happened to Home. Either way, it seems that AZ spread some sort of infection or infestation, seemingly to anything biological it can get to, since we see deer and cows being affected, and it's very likely the mentioned dogs were too. In the next video, Starkill, we see a slide denoting that this is classified information from the Home Xenobiology Research Group. It seems this video covers some information regarding the contagion discovered on January 16th, the day of the previously seen events. The department are receiving little results from injecting the contagion into white-tailed deer and coyotes, but have gained some data from injections into onions. The slides show that in under a second, the cells of the onion are completely mutated and changed beyond recognition. They also suspect, based on their findings, that the contagion has some level of intelligence. They also say it poses a massive threat to the entire population and suggest it is destroyed on sight. They've designated a name for the contagion: Starkill. The description is as follows. The tape was discovered inside a barricaded examination room in the abandoned Red Oaks Veterinary Clinic. Despite its alleged nature, the contagion shown in the video has yet to be discovered in any form. Once again, the description is very interesting. The contagion is never discovered, also another abandoned location. How far in the future from these events were the descriptions written, and how much have things changed since then? Or did Home actually manage to contain the contagion to the point that nobody in the public ever knew about it? Let's keep going. The next video is Phantoms. Immediately, we see the screen telling us this is a highly classified incident report, so classified that unauthorized access is punishable by death. This incident timeline starts 12 days after AZ Alpha arrives. A Dr. Andrew Evans returns to the trunk for further analysis. In the audio recording, we hear Dr. Evans coughing, though he says he's fine when queried. It's hard to make out exactly what's being said as they walk up, but it sounds like the voice on the radio says bio levels are low. They mark an area for sample collection. We then get a field photo. We can assume the man in white is Dr. Evans, and the other person is wearing the same style of hazmat suit as seen in Home. We also get a good look at a bit of the Alpha chunk. Next, we see a scenario recreation as Dr. Evans returns to the Home HQ. We see a familiar name at the facility, Dr. O'Connor from the Psychological Contamination Lab. Evans drops off the samples, then refills the water cooler, seemingly taking a while to do so. He gets 2 cups of water, then heads over to Dr. O'Connor. bringing him one of the cups. They chat about how the chunk was apparently too necrotic to take good samples. Evans returns to his desk and a few minutes later starts exhibiting unusual behavior, which is a pretty light way to describe what seems to happen to him. Then, he heads to another area of the facility where an unlabeled person confronts him. Evans asks who they are. He then tells us that HQ was put under lockdown following gunshots. We can easily guess who was shot at when we see this. Later that night, Evans' body arrives for an autopsy at the morgue. His scans show a body completely changed, pockmarked with holes and misshapen biology. Then, weirdly, we're told his death is ruled as an assassination by a third party, and after this incident, Dr. O'Connor vanishes. Plus, it was uncovered that a vial of the AZ samples was also missing after the incident. It seems pretty clear that Evans was infected, and that he deliberately did something to infest the water cooler and thusly Dr. O'Connor. He was clearly very thoroughly infected at this point, so it's apparent that the xenobiology department was correct in that the infection has intelligence. Either it is able to perfectly mimic Evans, or it was able to affect his thinking pattern and desires towards spreading the infection. But who is this third party? The wording of the target terminated and the radio chatter at the end seemed to suggest this was a planned attack. Evans doesn't seem to recognize them, so it's likely they're not a home employee. The description reads, "The footage on the tape documents an event believed to have irreparably impeded Holmes' ability to safely study AZ-001. The tape was found inside an underground bunker 12 miles west of Lincoln, Nebraska. One wall within the bunker was painted with a logo similar but not identical to the logo used by Home." The next video, Bulletin, is a shorter one. The description reads as thus: "The broadcast shown was believed to have aired sometime during the week of January 25, 1999. The tape was found alongside another cassette in the collapsed remains of a house in Stewart, Nebraska. The tape is from Public Access Cable 17 on January 30th. Apparently, there'll be a televised service at the Long Pine Midwest Church the next day. The church then thanks a few people for volunteering to help at the service. Amongst them is a familiar name, Ray O'Connor. Though this video is short, the implications are clear. Infected Dr. O'Connor is out there, trying to spread the infection to even more people, possibly using the missing sample from the previous video. The next video is titled Azazel, and we will address the implications of that name very soon. First of all, the description indicates this tape is the second one found in that house, alongside the Bulletin video. It also says, most buildings in the Long Pine ruins were found to be destroyed with a large crater discovered near the site of the former church building. The circumstances surrounding the crater's formation are currently under investigation. This video is marked as property of Long Pine Police Department and is being from the 20th of February 1999. It covers the activities of Officers Sam Page and Andrew Webster on the 11th and 12th of February. On the 12th, both were apparently killed. On the 8th, a missing persons PSA airs on KMNE TV. They appear to be airing a run of the 1955 noir film The Big Combo. I think the wording of the scene chosen here is interesting when applied to Midwest Angelica.
Everything's falling apart. Can't trust nobody, nothing!
Indeed. The film is cut off by the missing persons PSA, and it rolls through a few missing people, with very familiar names. These are all names of people who were helping at the church service. At 9:35 PM on the 11th, they receive a 911 call from an unknown ID. The distressed caller is near the church, and claims some sort of human sacrifice is occurring there. Officers Page and Webster are sent to the church, and we see some photographs apparently recovered from their vehicle and somewhere redacted. Photos apparently taken by Webster. A gift of the blood of an angel, phantom in its appearance, but insides churn with flesh and blood of the stars. The blessed walk in silence, blissfully closer to his sacred realm, ascended beyond mortals. We have become apostles of Azazel. Altar, an offering of souls to the body of the fallen, reconstruction of God's realm, infinite in its cycle of life, death but a moment of passing time. He is infinity incarnate. We then see a shot of someone in a hat standing in a tunnel. This is the last known appearance of Officer Sam Page, whose body is yet to be recovered. Webster heads outside to look for the issue. He sees this weird thing in the trees, which greatly resembles the shape we see on this image, Altar. He takes some photos of it, and it's seemingly formed or surrounded by weird, blank, mannequin-like bodies. One of them in the footage can be seen moving. Webster is worried someone's following him. He finds a clearing, then sees a silhouetted person from whom tentacle-like forms emerge as the camera fails. Webster's body was found, but something regarding it is redacted. The cause of his death remains unknown. Unmarked military personnel retrieved the body and the footage. A man named Robert Spencer from the CIA has taken control of the area and threatened the local police into silence. Our final full video for the time being is Stages, another piece of classified material from the home xenobiology group. Observe stages of the Starkill infestation as of the 23rd of February 1999, shortly after the events of the prior video. Stage 1 is Sustenance Hunt, in which it consumes as much biomass as possible to sustain itself. Stage 2 is Intelligence Accumulation, in which it searches for and targets the most intelligent species available for assimilation. Stage 3 is Self-Replication. It forms enough biomass to create new entities from itself using biomass structural hubs. These are altars, producing smaller lifeforms, and temples, producing larger ones. There's been a hypothesized fourth stage based on critical mass calculations. They don't know what will happen once it reaches critical mass, but based on the data, they suspect this is how large the network will be within a year. And that's the end of Act 1 of Midwest Angelica. There's a trailer for Act 2 up already, and we'll certainly learn more when that starts coming out, but let's analyze what we can figure out so far about what's going on in Midwest Angelica. Let's talk about Azazel. Midwest Angelica very obviously has religious connotations and connections throughout the series. Obviously the word angel appears in the title. Angelica is a type of plant, which some varieties of slightly resemble the altars we've seen, though this might be a stretch. It's also a name meaning angelic, and in general obviously just has the word angel within it. There's also the straightforward mentions of God, angels, God's realm, etc. in the video Azazel. Beyond that, I'm sure the fact that the latter sections of Act 1 take place in and around a church is no accident. Azazel is in traditional mythology a fallen angel. He is sometimes presented as an angel of death. In many stories, he was an angel who had children with human women, birthing a new species called Nephilim, which were considered soulless as they were not creations of God. He taught humans to make weapons and cosmetics, and when the bloodshed and lawlessness created was seen by God, God called for him to be bound hand and foot, cast into darkness, and sent to the desert in Dudael, a sort of prison for fallen angels. Azazel is also associated with the idea of a scapegoat in some mythos, someone who's blamed for others' wrongdoings, and is associated with goats in general. There's clear intent on the part of what I'll continue to call AZ, the space body, to be referred to and considered as Azazel. AZ was first noticed in 1985, and they decided to call it AZ-001, with AZ obviously connecting to the name Azazel. Now, this could mean that it chose the name Azazel based on the AZ designation, however, I think it's much more likely to be the other way around. It made the scientists choose the AZ designation. We know for a fact that it has some major level of psychological influence over people. We see that it somehow affected people's dreams in a wide area, though we don't see the details, and more obviously, it seems that it was able to affect Dr. Evans and Dr. O'Connor in a massive way, making them spread the Starkill infection to many more people, while still seemingly retaining their prior appearances and actions as human for the most part. They were picking up massive brainwaves even before it landed, so it's no stretch to assume it influenced the scientists to call it a certain way. After reaching Earth, it continues to push this idea of it being Azazel. The writings of the church all suggest those afflicted by it were viewing it as such. But what is its intent in doing so? Well, I think that can be answered in the Stages video. We know it targets the most intelligent species to help it continue to spread, which means that the intelligence of the species plays into the spreading somehow. Therefore, it tracks that it would somehow use the mental state as part of this spread. It seems likely to me that it came to learn of humans' affinity for religion and certain topics related to that, and decided to take a form that humans would be willing to submit to with less effort on its part. In particular, it chose a concept that people in the American Midwest would be more likely to be familiar with, rather than one more familiar to other religions and regions across the world, meaning that it likely already knew where it would land by the time it was picked up near Jupiter by the scientists. This implies pretty heavily to me that its arrival on Earth was intentional, which you could probably figure anyway from its actions. But what actually is it? In the early scans, it was suspected to be a floating corpse, but its actions seem very deliberate and intelligent. It does appear to potentially be some form of hive mind, or at least have some level of connected consciousness and intent, as we see in the projection that by that time it's made of multiple parts spread across the states. It is possible though that they're all separate entities, just with the same goal. Physically, it appears to form tentacles when taking over a body. It also seems to change the Earth itself in some areas over time, such as we see with the mushroom-like forms at Starfield Ranch. It looks to almost completely restructure the internal body of an entity whilst maintaining the outer appearance, though perhaps now with some disregard to what should be possible with the body as we see with Dr. Evans. However, in Home, the hazmat suit person seems to be almost liquefied. I think this reflects the proposed stages seen in the stages video. The hazmat person was eaten for the sustenance AZ needed to progress, as I believe the Starfield Ranchers also were at stage 1, and Evans and O'Connor were piloted to spread the infection further once they'd eaten what they needed and figured out their target as stage 2. We see stage 3 in what happens at the church. This altar that Webster found is one of the mentioned biomass hubs it forms to create new entities. It appears to be producing those entities in the same form as humans. I wonder if this is why it chose Azazel specifically to represent itself. These human masses could be in reference to the Nephilim. It's also possible the choice is related to the fact that Azazel was cast from the heavens as AZ fell from the skies. Stage 4, as stated in the video, is only a prediction, but it seems likely that its goal is to reach this proposed critical mass point. I think its goal is to amass as much biomass as possible. For what reason? Well, there's still more of AZ out there, remember? The part that fell was just a chunk. It's possible even that this is not the only thing like this out in space either. It's possible it could be taking over and terraforming the planet to support more things like it. And what are the humans? We obviously have the human population in general, who seem to be largely unaware of the threat due to the suppression of information, which also seems to include general police departments. We have those affected by AZ, such as Evans prior to his death and O'Connor, who were afflicted and working to spread AZ. We have Home, who are working directly to study AZ and perhaps move against it. We also don't know who the unmarked military personnel mentioned in the Azazel video are working for exactly, though obviously they're somewhat affiliated with the CIA. And finally, the mysterious third party, the one who killed Evans. It's unclear if this is someone working for Home, but Evans didn't recognize them, and the lockdown was initiated after the gunshots, meaning it's likely this person was not a Home response but someone else. The description also adds to this. The footage on the tape documents an event believed to have irreparably impeded Home's ability to safely study AZ-001. The tape was found inside an underground bunker 12 miles west of Lincoln, Nebraska. One wall within the bunker was painted with a logo similar but not identical to the logo used by Home. It sounds to me like another group took over the role that Home originally filled, but more targeted against AZ in secrecy, though who or what they are, we don't have much information. We don't actually know what happened to Dr. Lucas Michaels, the first speaker in Home to have disappeared without a trace in 1989. He was one of the first to know and potentially be affected by AZ. I wonder if maybe he has something to do with this mysterious third party, but there's not much information to go off yet. After all this, what about the footage itself and the descriptions? It sounds to me that the information we're being provided is some form of historical record. Most of the video's language and text parts is in past tense, but a special note are the video descriptions, which all seem to imply that not only these tapes recovered from abandoned sites, they seem to have little knowledge of the events that transpired. They imply many buildings, large and important ones as well as smaller sites, have been left in rubble. They also seem to imply that the so-called Starkiller infection is completely unknown to them. There's also some sort of mysterious crater near the church in Long Pine. The description of stages suggests that no footage has been created by Home since the 23rd of February 1999. We don't have much information to go off here. Are these descriptions from some time farther in the future? What could have happened to the world in between the footage and the descriptions that makes things so clearly different, to the point that they don't even know about any of this? It's very interesting, but I don't think we have enough information yet to develop a proper theory in regards to that. But don't worry, it sounds like Midwest Angelica will be continuing very soon, and it sounds like by the time you see this video, Act 2 will probably have begun. I for one am very excited to see the continuation of this creative series. Make sure to go and show your support to the Midwest Angelica channel, and let's theorize together about what could be coming up next. I don't know when we'll be talking about this series again, but rest assured we'll be back to study Act 2 and the continuation of this intriguing story, so keep your ticket handy, feel free to leave your things in your seat, and I'll see you back at the theatre soon. Thanks for watching today's Panopticon Theatre performance. What do you think? Did I miss anything? What do you want me to talk about next? Make sure to sub and join the audience if you want to see more.